The subway car rattled, the clock striking 11:59 p.m. The last train of the night felt suffocating, its air stale. As the train entered a tunnel, the lights flickered, and suddenly, the passengers vanished. A faint tapping broke the silence, growing louder until a pale, grinning face pressed against the window. Its black, empty eyes locked onto mine, unmoving, even as the train hurtled forward. I screamed and scrambled to the other side of the car, my breath hitching as the tapping followed me. The face seemed to glide along the glass, its empty eyes unblinking. Then, without warning, the train screeched to an abrupt halt, throwing me forward. The lights went out, plunging everything into darkness. 11:59 p.m. I jolted awake, my bag clutched tightly in my lap, phone glowing faintly in my hand. The screen read 11:59 p.m. The train rumbled into a tunnel, and I looked around, expecting to see other passengers, but the car was empty. My phone buzzed, displaying an unsettling message. "Do you remember yet?" My stomach dropped. The tapping sound returned, sharper this time. I turned to the window, where the pale face reappeared, its dark eyes burning with rage. It pounded on the glass with both hands, its movements frantic and violent. The train screeched to a halt as the lights flickered, plunging the car into darkness. Footsteps echoed through the stillness, slow and deliberate. "Who's there?" I whispered, barely breathing. When the lights flickered back on, the figure stood at the far end of the car, its face unnaturally close, its void-like eyes piercing through me. "Remember," it hissed, its voice distorted and inhuman. The train jolted forward, and the lights went out again, leaving me alone in the suffocating dark. 11:59 p.m. I woke up again, my chest heaving, my phone buzzed, and I stared at it in disbelief. 11:59 p.m. The car was empty again. The tunnel was approaching. I felt a surge of panic, my mind racing. This wasn't a nightmare. I was trapped in something far worse. My phone buzzed with another message. "You can't run from the truth." "No," I whispered, tears welling in my eyes. "No, I don't understand. What truth?" As the train rumbled into the tunnel, the lights flickered again. This time, they didn't stabilize. The car plunged into darkness, and the tapping on the window began once more. I didn't dare turn to look. I squeezed my eyes shut, clutching my bag tightly. "It's not real," I muttered. "It's not real." The tapping stopped. A hand clamped down on my shoulder. My eyes snapped open, and I turned to see the face, inches from my own. It wasn't outside the window this time. It was in the car with me. Its black eyes bored into mine, and its twisted smile stretched impossibly wide. "You left us to die," it whispered. "The fire." I gasped as the subway car vanished, replaced by a burning room. Flames licked at the walls, smoke choking the air. I stumbled back, coughing, my eyes watering as the heat seared my skin. I was in an office, a familiar one. Papers and desks were scattered everywhere, and a group of people huddled near a blocked exit, their faces twisted in fear and desperation. I froze as the memories came flooding back. This was the fire I'd escaped, the fire where I'd left them all behind. "No," I whispered, shaking my head. "This can't be real. I didn't." "You ran," a voice hissed behind me. I spun around to see the figure standing in the flames, its black eyes reflecting the inferno. "You didn't warn them. You left them to burn." The huddled people turned to me, their faces melting away to reveal skulls, charred and blackened. They began to chant, their voices overlapping. "You left us. You left us. You left us." I screamed, covering my ears. The flames surged toward me, and I fell to my knees as the fire consumed me. I woke up trembling, my phone buzzing. The time read 11:59 p.m. I didn't need to look. The car was empty. The face would return. I knew the truth now. On the night of the office fire, I'd fled through the only clear exit without warning anyone. The tapping began as the train entered the tunnel. The face appeared, its voice cold. "You can't run forever." Tears streamed down my face. "I'm sorry." I whispered. The train screeched to a halt and the lights went out. But this time I made a choice. I bolted toward the nearest door, pounding on it desperately. The emergency release lever gave way and I tumbled onto the platform, gasping for air. The face didn't follow. For the first time in weeks, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. The station was quiet, empty, like nothing had happened. I never boarded another subway again. Every time I saw a train pass, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was still out there, waiting. The station was actually the rare exception which was otherwise completely deserted. The director was completely alone. The nightmare was over, but I knew I'd never be free of the fear it left behind. I woke to eerie chimes echoing through the house. Deep, resonant, and impossible. My phone read 11:57 p.m. The grandfather clock, silent for years, was inexplicably alive, its long forgotten chimes cutting through the darkness. I sat up, heart pounding as the sharp scent of smoke filled the air. Grabbing a flashlight, I swung my legs off the bed, adrenaline coursing through me. The floorboards groaned beneath me, each step unnaturally loud in the silent house. Shadows shifted along the dark hallway, flickering like they had a life of their own. Reaching the living room, I froze. The grandfather clock stood tall in its corner, bathed in faint moonlight, its pendulum swaying ominously. Its once still pendulum swayed, slow and deliberate, slicing through the air with an almost hypnotic rhythm. The chimes persisted, each one louder than the last, reverberating through my chest. "Hello?" I called out, my voice trembling, barely more than a whisper. The room swallowed my words. The shadows seemed to deepen as I edged closer to the clock. The metallic tang of smoke grew stronger, mingling with the faint scent of aged wood and dust. I could feel my pulse hammering in my ears, the flashlight trembling in my grip. No response came. The clock stood before me, unyielding and ominous. Its face glowed faintly, the hands frozen in place, pointing defiantly to 12. My breath caught in my throat. I reached out, hesitating for a moment before my fingers brushed the cold metal casing. The instant I touched it, the world around me shifted. I stepped closer. The clock's face glowed faintly, its hands frozen at 12, though the chime continued. When I reached out to touch it, cold metal met my skin. My stomach growled, ready to diarize. My lips pinched with pain. And then, the world went black. I woke with a gasp, drenched in sweat. My phone screen glared back at me, 11:57 p.m. The same chime echoed through the house. My breath hitched. Hadn't this just happened? I rushed to the living room. The clock was still ticking, still chiming, its hands immovable at midnight. A faint, mocking laugh echoed from somewhere nearby, freezing me in place. "Who's there?" I demanded. No answer. Then the laughter grew louder, more menacing. Before I could react, the floor seemed to give way beneath me. I fell, tumbling into darkness. I landed in a strange room, charred walls dripping with some thick black substance. In the center stood a chair with a framed photograph resting on it. I hesitated before picking it up, dread clawing at my chest. It was a picture of me. I sat smiling at a dinner table with a woman and a young boy. My stomach churned. I didn't know them. Or did I? Before I could make sense of it, the photograph burst into flames, the fire consuming the frame in seconds. The room twisted around me, dragging me into an abyss of smoke and shadows. 12 a.m. I woke again. The same sequence unfolded, the clock chiming, the faint smell of smoke, and the growing sense of dread. This time, a message glowed on my phone screen. "Remember what you did." I stumbled to the clock, trying to wrench open its glass casing. My fingers found soot streaking its surface. A trail of ash led from the clock to the front door. I followed it, opening the door to find an endless forest stretching before me. Twisted trees loomed overhead, their branches clawing at the night sky. "Ethan?" The voice of a child whispered through the air, distant yet distinct. Ethan, help me. My blood ran cold. Who was Ethan? My name wasn't Ethan. I ventured deeper into the forest, the scent of smoke growing stronger. The voice guided me to a small cabin, its windows glowing with flickering firelight. "Now," I whispered. The cabin burst into flames, roaring with life. A child's scream pierced the air. "Daddy, help me." I froze as fragmented memories crashed over me. Images of a burning house, my wife's desperate screams, and the anguished cry of a child. I stumbled back, shaking my head. "This isn't real," I muttered. But the scene didn't waver. 12 p.m. I woke again, gasping for breath. My phone buzzed with another message. "You left them? You lit the fire." Tears blurred my vision as the truth resurfaced. I had walked away from the fire that consumed my wife and son. Their screams echoed in my mind, louder than the chimes of the clock. "Stop!" I shouted, clutching my head, desperate for silence. As the pendulum stilled, the shadows retreated, and I was suddenly back in my living room, the clock silent. I gasped for air, the nightmare finally ending. The suffocating guilt lifted as I opened the window, letting the cool night air fill my lungs. "I'm sorry," I whispered, knowing it wasn't enough, but it was a beginning. The clock remained still, as if it too had decided to set me free.